Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Barroom Network. Follow Barroom Network at Barroom Network for all the Bears offseason coverage you need. And follow me at the Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed on social media as well. We're live on YouTube right now. Feel free to chime in if you're watching live. I know the Barflies are here and ready to be heard in the comments section. If you missed any of our previous episodes, they're up on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes for the audio-only versions. Remember, like, subscribe, tell a friend or two or several. Ross, how you doing post-Super Bowl with his grungy Nirvana shirt? I dig it.
Smells
like Teen Spirit.
Always smells like Teen Spirit, yes. Is that probably one of the top 25 songs in the last 30, 40 years?
Ooh, we gotta make
certainly
a list.
One of the most iconic, right?
Gotta make a list. Well, we talked about, did Fast Car come out in 25, 30 years?
Yes, Fast Car's on the list as well.
That's probably on the list too. We got to make our own list, my man.
That'd be a nice list. We got some time now in the off season. We should
certainly do
put our list together of the top 25 to 30 songs we think are best of all time, or at least in the last 20, 30 years.
Sure, Nirvana, even though short-lived, obviously
lives
on. I wonder if the TikTokers know about Nirvana at this point.
Which I'm surprised with all the biopic craze that nobody has done a Kurt Cobain biopic. I'm sure it'll come soon enough.
Courtney Love will sign off on it. No time.
You get the guy that played Dahmer in American Horror Story would be Kurt Cobain, right?
Oh yeah, Evan Peters. I would enjoy that. That's kind of a good call, Ross. I co-sign that. A lot to get to on the show today. All that aside, we're recapping the Super Bowl at length as the Chiefs come out victorious, and what to think of the 49ers and that loss, and the legacy of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and company. Of course, talk about Usher and an electric halftime show. And then what we're doing, of course, Bears offseason moves we'll touch on as well. And then, of course, the hype about the stadium. We didn't even talk about the Sox Stadium. Get Ross's thoughts on that, the potential of that in moving. And then, NBA All-Star Weekend's already here this weekend. We'll talk about the lineup for the dunk contest. Beyond that, three-point shootout, surprises along the way, the Super Bowl commercials. Lots of fun to be had in this next hour. But to begin, of course, let's recap the Super Bowl. It was a pretty great one in that second half. If you don't like a defensive battle in the first half, I can understand people, calling it a dud, but you kind of thought it was going to be a chess match. And as Ross alluded to, you kind of want to bet the under throughout. And it came very close to hitting the over, even with overtime, just by the damn extra point, right, Ross? Sure. And so, in that first half, not a ton of action. San Francisco, looking like the better team in the first half, and even in the second half going into overtime, it was just really about the teams outlasting each other. But the final, obviously 25-22 into overtime as the Chiefs, raised the trophy for the second year in a row. And, the Chiefs, we've seen what a great team they are throughout throughout the season and throughout the Super Bowl, of course, once again, and Mahomes really making those big plays when they needed them the most, as far as the big plays with his arm, his feet, led the team in rushing. 49ers kept Isaiah Pacheco mostly in check. And then, Travis Kelce had that rough first half. We saw a lot of the headlines, and still it's a bad look when you're yelling in Andy Reid's face like he did. I know he was heated after being taken out of that play where he should have been in blocking. There was a fumble on the play. He's getting pissed, throughout the, the down half that the Chiefs had in that first half. But then second half, the top dog was Mahomes, and same deal as all season. Otherwise, whoever he's throwing to, whether it be Travis Kelce, Rashid Rice, Watson, Pacheco out there getting some catches when it mattered. Marquez Valdez-Scantling barely covering his prop bet of 19 and a half yards and getting a touchdown to boot. The game winner, it was fitting it went to McCole Hardman after not starting the season with the team. It was awesome. He gets another ring. And defenses, they were really grinding it out in the first half. I think the Niners just got certainly worn out toward the second half and into overtime. Of course, Trey Greenlaw going down was big. There were a couple injuries throughout that game where it really hurt the 49ers. Kittle almost looked like he had separated his shoulder at some point, but he came back to really thug it out, as it were. But Steve Spagnuolo, you got to give a lot of credit to him. I mean, for me to see him and the effect he has on that Chiefs defense when you compare to 49ers, where it's a lot of blue chip talent, which Ross always talks about, you want to build your football team around. Credit to Steve Spagnuolo, shutting down the best offense in the league with a squad of mostly, non-pro bowlers. It's just solid guys who come from that Chiefs draft pool, like Nick Bolton and Trek McDuffie and George Karlaftis. They're not flashy, and they didn't get a ton of pressure on Brock Purdy or forced turnovers, but they held him to 22 points, including the overtime, when the 49ers were top 5 in the league in scoring. It's a big showing on the biggest stage. So it was really impressive to see. And shout out to the kickers, Moody and Butker, making those 50-plus yarders look easy. That Moody extra point was certainly a big difference maker. He had huge implications into the second half and into overtime. Talked a lot, but Ross, your impressions of that game.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about last week, this game was going to be a lot of a feeling out process early on, and that's what it was. You had two very good football teams, two outstanding coaches go head-to-head at each other, so a lot of it was a chess match. I thought the 49ers played well in the first half. They were able, defensively, they were able to keep Mahomes and that offense at bay for the most part. And then, to me, in the second half, there were a few miscues. Obviously the fumble, that on the punt return, the muff kick, so to speak, where it touches the player, was a humongous play. The missed extra point, as you alluded to, was a huge play, because then all of a sudden Pat Mahomes only needs 3 points to tie the game, and instead of the touchdown to get the go-ahead win. But ultimately, in my opinion, this goes back to, we have to have a Kyle Shanahan conversation. And this is now his third Super Bowl, 2 as a head coach and 1 as an offensive coordinator, where he continuously goes for these kill shots in the second half by trying to pass the football when the running game is right there. And even at the very least, the quick pass is right there. And you want to be able to continue to salt this game away, keep your defense on the sidelines, and try and extend these drives as long as possible. And I thought that he did the opposite of that in the second half. And he was really trying to go for the kill and trying to prove people that his offense was superior to Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes. I thought it backfired, in my opinion. I thought, like Cliff is alluding to in the comments, I thought they got away from Christian McCaffrey in the first half and in the second half. He did end up with a great game through the air. But even then, I thought, you just didn't get him enough touches in the second half. And that's a Kyle Shanahan special at this point. That's how they lost the Super Bowl the last time they played against the Chiefs, where he had a 10-point lead with under 10 minutes left in the football game. That's how he lost to Tom Brady and the Patriots when it was 28-3, excuse me. And he allowed them to come back. So this is a Kyle Shanahan situation. He fired Steve Wilks. He puts the blame at Steve Wilks. I thought the 49ers defense played outstanding for most of that game. If you go into the end of the fourth quarter and into the overtime, and you've been able to keep Pat Mahomes under 20 points, I think you've done your job. And so I put a lot of this blame on Kyle Shanahan. He didn't even know. He says he did. We don't know if he knows the rules to the overtime. They should have went second, because you want to know the points that you need to get on that drive. Me personally, you're looking at a 4th and 4 situation. I think I would have went for that, because that guy over there is Pat Mahomes. He's going to get the touchdown. I promise you he's going to get the touchdown. The way he's been rolling in the fourth quarter and the way your defense is tired, especially without Greenlaw on the field, he's going to get it. I would have went for that 4th and 4 and not kick the field goal. So a lot of it to me was on Kyle Shanahan. But overall, it was a good game. It was a fun game. I know a lot of people saying it was boring for a lot of 3 quarters. That's football. That's just a good old-fashioned chess match between two teams. Eventually, in the fourth quarter, we got a lot more action once we got the Jesus commercials and Scientology commercial out the way.
Jesus commercials coming in hot, real quick to start, and Timu.
Who knew Jesus had that much money for commercials?
That's what I said, man. The church is banking these days. It's like you were alluding to. It feels like the story is more just the 49ers giving away the Super Bowl rather than the Chiefs winning it, when we should be talking more about the Chiefs dynasty and about them winning back-to-back Super Bowls and Mahomes' legacy and chasing Brady and Andy Reid's place and, the coaching Mount Rushmore. But the 49ers, as you said, just to me, it felt like, as great as Christian McCaffrey is, and they could have been running to him a lot more. Obviously, he had 80 catches or 80 yards on 8 catches and a touchdown. In the second half got going a bit more as far as rushing, or less so than the first half. But it was the receivers that weren't able to get any breathing room on the Chiefs secondary. And you look at Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, and of course, George Kittle had 2 catches for 4 yards. Like, that's unacceptable from this offense. And it directly points to a large reason why you lost this. I mean, I get it that these guys were getting a lot of the attention, and it created some more space for a guy like Juwan Jennings to make his name heard in that offense. But it was kind of a choke job as far as Kyle Shanahan is concerned. And then it's you heard the mic'd up after the game went final and later this week, as far as the Chiefs players reacting to the 49ers making that decision to ultimately take the ball first, and didn't know the rules, and know it was just, the other team gets that opportunity to score again. They didn't know that rules had changed, like Kyle Juszczyk had said in his mic'd up moment too. It's just inexcusable. And it's tough, man. Like, to see, these guys like Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, and guys who have, those are, guys, as far as McCaffrey and Purdy, guys who have first time being there, but Kittle and the vets like Trent Williams, who have just grinded away and been so consistent and great for this team, and part of the core of this 49ers team, for them to come up short again, it just haunts you. And you wonder if they can get back to this again. They're certainly built like it. Like, look at last year, how great they were on offense before this last Super Bowl. And coming up just short against the Eagles, you'd figure they could be right back in the NFC against, the Lions or whoever you put up there against them again. But it was a choke job, but it just also just speaks volumes of how Andy Reid makes those adjustments, and how this Chiefs team just knows how to finish games. And just, again, that missed extra point and just little bounces, that little turnovers, things like that. The fumbles were huge, just momentum swings. It was impressive for Kansas City. But yeah, again, just really more so about 49ers and where do they go from here with another tough loss like this.
Yeah, and you look at the odds for next year, they're already the favorites to win 2025 Super Bowl. And that is a testament to how good their roster is. But I do want to push it into a different conversation, which is, Pat Mahomes now has solidified himself as a top 3 quarterback of all time. This guy's not even 30 years old. And
yeah,
he put his team on his back in that fourth quarter and overtime, like superstar Hall of Fame legends do. And to me, you have to start looking as a whole at the NFL, because you are in the midst of a potential dynasty now, because there is a possibility that this can continue on for a long time. Andy Reid's not going anywhere. Pat Mahomes is not going anywhere. They're going to be able to retool. They didn't have good receivers this year, and they still won a Super Bowl. Everybody thought this team was dead to rights 7-8 weeks ago. But when you have the best quarterback in the league, the best player in the league, you're always in it, and you're always a threat to win the Super Bowl. And so now, if you're the 49ers, you have to, and look, I think Brock Purdy played good on Sunday, but good is not going to beat Hall of Fame. And so you have to really start looking at your quarterback situation, because you notice in that second half, especially in the fourth quarter, when Spagnuolo really dialed up the heat, and he played cover 0 and he was blitzing and really sending the heat, Brock Purdy doesn't have the arm angle. He doesn't have the arm strength. He doesn't have the athleticism and the wherewithal to be able to get the ball out quickly or make the plays and to adjust. And I think that there were limitations there that we saw at the end of the game as the 49ers were not able to ice it. And on the flip side, Pat Mahomes is the exact guy that you want in that situation. So, when you do start looking forward next 5 to 10 years, because Pat Mahomes is going to be around for that long time, you have to start thinking we need to get elite quarterback play to be able to beat this guy consistently in the Super Bowl, or else he could rattle off. He's in the stretch right now of having one of the best 10-year starts to an NFL career, especially for a quarterback. And the likes of what we've seen from Montana and Brady, and and so you have to start thinking, what do we do, or what kind of quarterback can we get to at least come close to matching his level? Because the team building thing, it works, but not year in, year out to be able to consistently knock this guy off. And again, that is no knock to Brock Purdy. I thought he played well. You could just tell at the end of that game, one guy's going in Canton, and the other guy is just a really cool story for the moment.
Yeah, and you look at the competition directly to him, and the names that pop up are Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson or a Joe Burrow. And, maybe of those three guys, I feel like I have the most faith in the Joe Burrow, and he just got a raw deal this last year because of the injury. I think he comes back strong this next year, maybe get a comeback player of the year award, something like that, and can vault himself back in the AFC Championship. The Bengals just had a tough down year again, and you got some faith in that organization. But when you look at Mahomes' performance and willing that the Chiefs team to win in overtime, it's just no doubt that this is in the midst of a dynasty that's really on par with what, as you said, Brady and Montana did. And you liken it to Brady because he led a team 20 years ago where it was the last team to go to back-to-back Super Bowls like they did. And Andy Reid certainly should get his flowers too. All the other greats that are on the coaching Mount Rushmore, 20 years again since the last back-to-back Super Bowl. It's so hard, especially now with parity in the league, to do what they did. They did it their way. And Mahomes, I agree with you that he's on track to really push Brady in all of his records and just be that best quarterback of all time. And it's still in just such a young career, super impressive for a dude with a dad bod. And we saw in that Netflix series, just the unique training really pays off. And Mahomes is just always on the biggest stage these days. Onto Reid, I guess, you put Mahomes in that top three. Is Andy Reid like top three, top two at this point?
He has to be. I mean, you still put Bill Belichick number one, but I think Andy Reid has to be in that top three right now because of what he's been able to do. He had a lot of success, obviously, in Philadelphia. They ran him out of town. That turned into the post McNabb and Vic years. And he had guys like Kevin Kolb out there and stuff like that. But what he's been able to do with Pat Mahomes in Kansas City and maximize Pat's talent, which I think is, it's a subject that we talk about a lot as Bears fans, is what coach can you get to maximize your quarterback's talent? And he helped turn Travis Kelce into a superstar, a Hall of Fame player. But his most remarkable coaching has been, I think people forget, I don't know if they forget, but they traded Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is also a future Hall of Fame wide receiver. And he's a top 3 wide receiver in the league, and they trade him away, and they won 2 more rings after that. That is just absolutely impressive. I fully expect for the Chiefs to go out in this offseason and find themselves like a T. Higgins or one of those big name wide receivers and really just go scorched earth on the league and do one of those like Brady to Moss type of seasons, So but yes, Andy Reid is knocking on the door. He's only 44 wins right now behind Bill Belichick for who's knocking on the door of the most of all time. He's behind Don Shula. And remember, Bill Belichick obviously is sitting out this season. So by the time the 2025 season starts, Andy Reid could be, close to 20 wins behind Bill Belichick. So he could finish theoretically, as long as he's lashes himself to Pat Mahomes, at the very least, the second winningest coach of all time, which I think is just really impressive.
Sorry, distracted by children screaming upstairs. As it were, in the basement down here, I do like the narrative of these two teams though, and you figure that might kick off the season this next year. I mean, the schedule's already released, but I hope that these two teams meet up in this next season, because it is just, you as much as you think that the 49ers just it'd be so hard to get back to this level, and you feel like there's a lot of moving parts where you might want to break up part of the band, that you could certainly try to run it back as best as you can. I mean, as tough a beat as Kyle Shanahan took, and he takes a lot of that blame. He still is one of those top young offensive minds out there, and you fail and fail, and then you succeed. You got to learn from your mistakes. It's the greatest learning experience that you can have, especially in that one. It's just brutal to see. Chiefs obviously celebrating in their parade, obviously in Vegas, which was nuts, as we saw in the clubs. And Jason Kelsey was in tow with Travis Kelsey wearing his luchador mask. But hopefully everybody in KC stayed safe, besides the crazy shooting that went down, which was pretty unheard of. Just really put a damper on the day. Other than that, it looked like a hell of a time.
It did. And, credit to that fan base. They're awesome. I had the pleasure of being there early in the season to see the Bears get absolutely demolished. But in the midst of all that was, me being able to be in an awesome stadium, in a football stadium, around good, knowledgeable football people in the heartland of the United States. So if there isn't a more deserving fan base to be able to have this kind of sustainable success right now than the Kansas City Chiefs. They remind me a lot of the Chicago Bears in that, before they got their Pat Mahomes, they struggled through a lot of lean years. There was a lot of Elvis Gerbach and even in the Priest Holmes days when they were close but not quite there. They predicated themselves early on defense. Rest in peace, Derek Thomas, who's a Hall of Fame player, outstanding player as well. They even had the corpse of Joe Montana try and bring them to a Super Bowl at some point as well. So, those guys deserve this. And, we now hope that here in Chicago, we can get to that level. And they kind of show us that there is hopefully a light at the end of the tunnel. And one day that could be us as Bears fans.
Yeah, that's certainly the hope. But yeah, I agree with you that the Chiefs fans are a good fan base. They got the Midwestern values and suffered through the lean years, as you mentioned. It felt like forever since obviously that first Super Bowl meeting Green Bay in the very first Super Bowl, and I think Mahomes should have smoked a cigarette and had a Coke at halftime as well, and then gone back out there. I'm sure someone has photoshopped that somewhere. The game aside, the halftime show has to be talked about, Ross. It was electric. Usher, you knew that there was going to be a crazy effort from him to put on one of the best shows we've seen as far as a halftime show is concerned. And I, dare I say, it seemed like the GOAT Super Bowl performer. We've had a pretty good last few years, Rihanna, and then the whole West Coast hip hop thing as far as Dr. Dre and Snoop was concerned, and Kendrick. That was great. But this was mostly all Usher. Obviously, there were features like Alicia Keys coming out, and then Jermaine Dupri looking like the Penguin, and of course Ludacris and Lil Jon for Yeah. But Usher just has so many hits, and we talked about. I think you saw his residency in Vegas, and just the showcase of hits, otherworldly dance moves, just the whole package of an entertainer. Probably the greatest one we've seen with those talents since Michael Jackson. The whole production was so fun and seamless. Didn't seem like there were really any hiccups besides Alicia Keys' little squeak, which, again, wasn't even on Usher at that point. But the roller skating Ross, he's just such a talent. It's hard to top it next year in New Orleans. What'd you think? Is it your GOAT halftime show?
As you know, he's my favorite artist of all time. I saw him in Vegas twice, residency. I've seen him in concert multiple times. I feel like if you were from age 35 to 45, this was like in your wheelhouse of like when you really grew up as a human being and as a person. And that was the music that you were listening to. But I think he did a great job. To me, the Super Bowl at this point has become less about the actual performance and more about the spectacle and what's going around the action. A lot of times these people are barely singing or barely. They don't even let you play instruments anymore. We saw her come out with electric guitar. She's an amazing electric guitarist, but she wasn't allowed to play. So that was literally a track that she had recorded earlier. And so there's a lot of that going on now. But I think that he did an amazing job with the 13 minutes that he was allotted, with all his hits and stuff like that. 13 minutes. And that's the thing is when you have a guy like Usher who has, 20 number one hits and he's got he's got an album that's gone diamond at this point and things like that. It's tough to try and condense everything and appease everybody in 13 minutes, but he was able to do the best that he can. And I actually think that he would have been better off, in my opinion, just doing everything by himself and not even using features because he's that iconic of an artist. But I think it was the best, certainly in the last 10 years that we've seen. And there's been some good ones on there. I'm not a huge Lady Gaga fan, but I actually think her performance is up there.
Very good.
Yep, I think she had a great performance. Of course, Beyonce had an iconic performance as well. Bruno Mars had a great performance.
Let's give love to Bruno Mars.
Bruno Mars had a great performance. He's a hell of a performer. But I think him and Usher are two of the better younger living performers that we have right now. Is it my GOAT performance? It's not. I remember Michael Jackson is unreal. I think Prince is the best of all time. Ironically, Prince is the one where the Bears lost the Super Bowl. But anytime that it rains while you're singing Purple Rain, and back then he was actually literally playing the guitar during that, I don't think anybody will ever be able to top Prince in the history of the Super Bowl. But I appreciate Usher for everything that he did. And I'm glad he's getting his flowers right now, most importantly, too, because he's very well deserving. He dropped the album last Friday. The album was very good. I enjoyed it. He's going now on a worldwide tour. Tour sold out in like 5 minutes. He literally had to add 6 more dates to his tour over the weekend just to try and appease everybody. So shout out to him. He did an amazing job. I thought Vegas, from afar, it looked like they did a great job as a host, for the Super Bowl. So much so it has me thinking, why don't they just host it every year? I know they like to bounce this thing around to different cities and different venues, but literally Vegas is the perfect home for a Super Bowl. They've got the infrastructure, they've got the hotels, they've got the restaurants and the nightlife, and it's easy to get in and out of there. And the stadium is absolutely beautiful. Aside from that turf, they got to fix that turf. But other than that, it's beautiful. But New Orleans has next year. New Orleans is on par as you and I have been there together. It's on par as a great city to host a Super Bowl as well. And now we start thinking about who's going to be able to host that or do that Super Bowl next year. Right now, I'd guess Taylor Swift would be the favorite at like -800, and Cash Money, my favorite, would be the long shot.
Oh, Cash Money! All right, we'll have Manny Fresh and Juvenile and Trombone Shorty out there. We'll have
Lil Wayne can bring out his Young Money crew of Drake and Nicki Minaj. But yeah, I would say Taylor Swift if she wants it. I don't even think she wants it because it doesn't bring her up. It doesn't give her any value. She's already on her 3rd world tour in the last 2 years. So that's not what she needs
more than anything.
Right? Yeah. Dark horse, I wouldn't sleep on Missy Elliott either. I think Missy Elliott is due for a Super Bowl performance as well.
Little Missy. As Cliff pointed out in the comments, it is worth so much money to these cities that can host it. Obviously, we are you are here in Green Bay, you can't fucking host it because where would we put such a thing?
Yeah.
You look at like the Browns right now, they're trying to build a dome and find out how to pay for it so they could potentially host a Super Bowl in the near future, something like that. You gotta have that dome.
Heard they're trying to pay it off with weed.
Lay off the weed. There's been worse ideas. It is just ungodly expensive to build these dome stadiums, and it sucks for Cleveland. Like I went there this past year. It's a great stadium and a great location, and you like that. If you do the dome, it's like I was reading up on Minnesota's new stadium. It's just that much more expensive to retract the roof, and you get that, but you don't get the same feel as an open air design stadium where you look at the California ones and what they're able to do because they have such nice weather all year round. It's tough, but you certainly wouldn't want to go to the Super Bowl in a blizzard, which is the chance you take in the fucking Midwest or one of these non-West Coast states for sure.
Although with climate change, I don't know if people believe in it or not, but it
Oh,
literally
no!
it's been 45 degrees in Chicago for the last
Oh,
month.
that's our night. Yeah, you can't deny that shit. The globe is warming.
We haven't had a winter this whole entire season in Chicago, which is just absolutely. I'm not complaining. Maybe I'll complain in 10 years from now when things are falling apart, but we don't have winters anymore. So maybe you can, in the next couple of years, start bringing these Super Bowls to cold weather cities. But I'm with you. I think at the very least, like if you're going to do Super Bowls in some of these cities, have it in the city. Like I agree with what Cleveland's trying to do. They're trying to build a dome on the lake. I agree with what Minnesota did. Chicago might be pivoting from Arlington Heights. We'll talk about that, obviously, to back to the city. Don't have a Super Bowl in New York and then have it be in New Jersey and have it be a pain in the ass to get to and stuff like that. So I think that's the things that I push back against. Even in Arizona, for as nice as Arizona is, Glendale, not very close to Scottsdale and Phoenix. It's still about an hour and a half drive.
As you talked about it, it just makes so much more sense when you have that infrastructure. If it's a SoFi or if it's Vegas is just it's so close to the airport. There's it's central. Whereas if it was in Jersey versus New York, it would be a pain in the ass to get to. I've heard just horror stories getting to
that's a terrible
stadium and all
that's
that.
A terrible stadium.
Yeah, I've never heard a good review about getting there.
Yeah.
Fact, Mitch Reed out here, and we don't get Cliff started on climate change. We'll move on. We'll move on from that. You can log up.
Yeah. We got a lot of Bears news over the last couple of weeks too. First of all, shout out to Devin Hester who made the Hall of Fame, right? It's first special team returners. Shout out to Steve McMichael who made the Hall of Fame as well. Mongo. Prayers to him right now, as I read before we started the show, Jared Payton's tweet saying that he's going to the emergency room this evening with a bout of pneumonia right now. So prayers to him. We hope that he's able to extend or go forward until August, where he's officially inducted into the Hall of Fame. But either way, credit to him for making the Hall of Fame, an outstanding career, and for holding on to doing this. And listen, I know Julius Peppers is going in as a Panther, but he had a lot of amazing years as a Chicago Bear as well. So shout out to Julius Peppers, one of my favorite Bears of all time. He's certainly my favorite Bears free agent signing of all time. And I'll never forget the story of Lovie Smith literally ringing his doorbell at 12:01 a.m. saying, "Let's go, we're on the way to Chicago. We're taking you with." So credit to all those guys. An outstanding Hall of Fame class. Patrick Willis got in. Speaking of the 49ers. Another outstanding middle linebacker as well. So credit to them. And then obviously we lost two active Bears today as they move on. Cody Whitehair has been released and Eddie Jackson as well, as the Bears free up about $22 million in cap space with those moves.
It makes a lot of sense with those vets are concerned. Offensive lineman Cody Whitehair and, of course, Eddie Jackson, who never should have changed his number from 39. It was all downhill from there. It's number 4 man and didn't really – once he got the bag, he just wasn't the same guy. I mean, mostly solid, I suppose you could say, but just never as great as that early on, the Matt Nagy years. But it makes a lot of sense, obviously, moving on from them. You wonder who's going to slide in there in the interior offensive line, and then it's a big hole at safety. Playing with Jaquan Brisker and company, and Jalen Johnson. Hopefully, get a long-term deal done for him. We've alluded to it as well. And prayers up to Mongo as he's been battling just all the complications of ALS, but it was nice to see he was able to, just kind of be a little bit lucid for that moment where, they let him know that he's in the Hall of Fame. And Devin Hester, man, obviously the first special teamer to go into the Hall of Fame, just well-deserved. What an incredible career. And Pepper's one of the best athletes we've ever seen. In the NFL, obviously played a lot of college ball at North Carolina, but man, he was so much fun to watch in those years in a Bears uniform, and it's kind of at his peak, right? And just able to, even before Khalil Mack, you just saw what a dynamic playmaker he was at defensive end, just could play all over the field. So yeah, well-deserved for those 3 guys. And the Bears, obviously, leading the league as far as franchises with most Hall of Fame players for good reason, 3 very deserving players there. And we alluded to it, the Bears pivoting from Arlington Heights, looking at the South lot, looking anywhere at this point, and the lot would be probably the most expensive, costly, crazy option at this point. Or, looking across the way just west over to the 78, which is, becoming a huge development on all that vacant land right now, thanks to the local developer related Midwest. And so the White Sox not into the guaranteed rate, not into the G spot, Ross, RIP the G spot, perhaps at some point, but perhaps moving to that prime real estate there, which would be pretty cool on the riverfront right there. And then you'd obviously have, mixed use things around that area, mixed use buildings and businesses, and probably a sports book and all that shit, and then be able to look at the skyline. I doubt both are happening, but it seems like it's kind of gaining some momentum as far as the Sox talk. The drawings were very cool. I know they're just drawings, like the same thing with Arlington Heights and the specs for that, but it gives you a little idea. But it's just crazy to think of them abandoning that South Side home that they have had for so long.
Yeah, and they've I, as somebody that's been going to see baseball games there since it was old Comiskey Park across the street. I went to probably my first White Sox game since when I was like 6 years old. I'm 42 years old at this point. They've run their course there. I love going there. It was very easy and very accessible to get there. But if you've gone to a baseball game there, there's not much in the area, and there's not much in the area because in the neighborhood's defense, they try to really control what would go up and what would go around that area. But at this point in time, you have to realize that sporting events in person are as much as the experience around it as the event itself, especially nowadays where people have 4K TVs and they can have betting apps and stuff like that. So, we're at the point right now, as somebody who lives right across the street from the 78, so the White Sox would be my new home. I actually think it's going to happen. It looks like this is going to go through. It looks like they're going to pull the trigger on this. They're going to get a lot of private dollars to help them fund this stadium. The developers, as you alluded to, behind the 78 are really motivated to get this done. And we know a guy like Jerry Reinsdorf loves using somebody else's money to be able to get something done. And so it sounds like that's going to happen. And this has very big ripple effect on Chicago Bears as well. There's a deadline now set for this Saturday to negotiate with the school board districts there to try and meet in the middle on this tax situation in Arlington Heights. They are still $100 million apart. And if you know how the Bears operate in terms of cash flow situation, this is mostly a mom and pop situation. This is a family-owned business. They're not owned by hedge fund managers and billionaires with outside money and stuff like that. I guess, quite frankly, I don't think the Bears are going to be able to get Arlington done. I don't think they seem entirely motivated at this point. Right. I think Kevin Warren has dropped multiple hints over the last month and a half about how he loves Chicago and things like that. And when you start to look at the 78, which is over here, it's about a block away from me right now, and then Soldier Field, what would be the new Soldier Field, which is about 4 blocks away from me. Then you start looking how the two situations can help each other, because now you're separated. You got 2 premier stadiums in the entire United States, sporting facilities, that are about 6 blocks away from each other. And now all of a sudden, the two can come together and help to build the infrastructure and everything that's needed. And they actually help each other. It's very similar to, if you've ever been to Philadelphia, they got the same situation. You ever been to Pittsburgh? They got the same situation as well. There are cities all over the country now. Denver, I think of as the same situation as well, where these stadiums are being put next to each other, and then they use the city as the infrastructure for the hotels, the restaurants, the bars, and things of that nature. And then all of a sudden, you can have a baseball game here one night, and then you can have Beyonce here at one night, and then you just have it all kind of flowing together. So I think while it was leaning towards the Bears going out to the suburbs, I just don't think they can afford that. I don't think the school board district is going to budge, nor do I think they should budge, because the Bears will just flip that property to somebody else that'll put single family homes on there and a Whole Foods, and they'll be able to pay for that tax no problem, right? There have been multiple studies that show you that building a stadium in these neighborhoods do not have the economic effect that people think that it has. In fact, it is the exact opposite. It has a worse effect on these neighborhoods, mostly because their taxes go up, but they don't see their economy rise to be able to obtain it. So I think we're going to find out soon enough. But in my opinion, we're trending to the fact that both the White Sox and the Bears will be neighbors soon, and I'll be about right in the middle of it all, 6 blocks from all of it.
You're right in the middle of that, and then God forbid the Bulls ever do anything. Quite the
Oh,
stretch just from the lakefront going west.
Yeah.
You could hit each
Yeah.
major sport in Chicago.
And it sounds cool that I love the idea of, they've already put it out there. If the White Sox leave, guaranteed rate doesn't go in vain. They just move the Chicago Fire right there. And I think that's a great location for them too. I think that's a really cool location. They'd have their own location that isn't Soldier Field. I think guaranteed rate field is still a really cool ballpark and a really cool field. And it'd be cool to see, Fire games there. Who never knows? Down the line, you might get a Kylian Mbappe or something like that you can recruit to Chicago, like Messi was recruited to Miami. So I think Chicago sports is going to be. I know it seems like it's on a downturn right now, but I think we'll eventually get back to better days in the city. And I put an emphasis on the city. All these teams have the word Chicago in front of their names, and I think more and more as we start to go forward, everybody wants to kind of be in that central location and be able to navigate through all that and just go to these different stadiums within the city.
Yeah, you're exactly right. McFact was pointing out in the comments. He said the Bears don't deserve, until they start winning, they don't deserve a new stadium. It's not about them so much as this city and what you think about beyond the Bears, what goes on in the off seasons too, especially for these the other structure mentioned with guaranteed rate, where it's an entertainment. It's one of the best entertainment capitals in the world, right? So we always constantly have something, whether it be the Chicago Fire or rugby or some international soccer tournament or God knows what coming through.
And the Bears,
throw it all out.
Yeah, and the Bears are still valued at top 5 in the NFL right now. Is one of the one of the highest valued franchises. Chicago is certainly one of the premier destinations for another team's fan base to come to, which drives more revenue for the Bears, also drives revenue for the city as an economy. You hit it on the head. Taylor Swift is going to keep touring, and so is Beyonce, and so is Drake, and so is Pearl Jam, and so is the Rolling Stones, and so are all these people. And they kind of want to do it in a really cool, badass stadium right off the lakefront. It's smack dab downtown in Chicago.
Yes, sir. Let's move on to some quick hits, Ross, as we're wrapping up the show. The NBA All-Star weekend is upon us, halfway through the basketball season. I got to get into it now. Finally, I can start investing some time in the NBA games. I mean, really, you can miss me with the skills competition. The three-point shootout's kind of fun, obviously, but it's really about the dunk contest, of course, even though there's not a ton of star power these days, although Jaylen Brown is entering it, which should be a little interesting. Jaime Jaquez Jr. from the Heat. Didn't know he existed until they announced these.
He's good. He's fun.
That's
fun
good.
Player. He's a fun player.
Jacob Toppin from the Knicks, and I love that Mac McClung.
Obi's brother.
Yeah, Obi Toppin's brother. I love that Mac McClung is, not great enough to get back into the NBA, but he's with the Osceola Magic from the G League, but he's defending his title. He was electric last year. I don't know what he has to do to repeat, but that should be very entertaining, man.
It should be. I love that finally we get at least one All-Star right in the dunk contest in Jaylen Brown. Yeah. So I think that's something that we've been asking for a long time. If I'm old enough to remember Jordan versus Dominique and Vince Carter and Dwight Howard and some all-star players go out there and try and win this award. So I'm still going to watch on Saturday. I know it's not as exciting as it used to be, but don't sleep on this dunk contest. I think the 4 guys are going to be in this are going to be fun. McClung is an awesome dunker. We saw what he did last year.
It's crazy.
Jacob Toppin is the brother of a guy that literally won the dunk contest already. The Toppin family, they got hops. They can really get up. Jaime Jaquez Jr. is one of the most exciting rookies that we've had this year. I've had a blast watching him. He fits right in with that Heat culture. And then the aforementioned Jaylen Brown. Anytime you put an all-star out there, it just changes the mood and the feeling of this a little bit. So I'm excited for the dunk contest. Always love the three-point contest as well. My guy, former Bull Lauri Markkanen, is in it. Anytime Lauri's in it, I'm always going to root for him to win. I still have a soft spot for him, but Karl-Anthony Towns was the guy that won last year. He's out there to defend his title again.
Big man.
Yep, absolutely. Don't sleep on the hometown favorite, Tyrese Halliburton, who is turning himself into one of the 10 to 12 best players in the league right now. He gets about 14, 15 assists a night and 30 points a night, it feels like.
Get the old East versus West format now. We're back into that, I believe, in this All-Star game, although not many people will be watching the All-Star game. It's a dunk contest of its own.
Did you see, though, they're doing this thing in the end this year where they're sending the whole floor for the game is like an LED floor. So they're like putting lights on there and they're doing like highlights on the floor after a player does something. That's going to be pretty trippy to see.
It's nuts. I hope it's
the future.
It'd be great. It would be great if it distracted the players to a point where they just were taken out of the game. But it's wild in our virtual reality world that we can see such things. The future's wild. That's for damn sure. On to music, Ross. By the way, better use of the beat from the same beat, I should say. Yeah, or Freak a Leak.
I saw that
which came to light, in case those folks don't know. They have that sort of same drum beat, and then Little John was explaining it. I forget before Little John who brought it out. It was I saw like Rosenberg, Peter Rosenberg, one of these radio personalities bringing it out. But Little John explained how Petey Pablo had that beat first, and then they had to use it after the fact.
Yep, the same drum, same snare, same kind of beat. I can't hear Freak a Leak now and not think of Petey Pablo. So I heard the version attached to Freak a Leak, and it just didn't sound. I think it was a win-win for everybody, because I do think that beat is undefeated. I think the way it starts, it's like an instant like, whoa, you know that song immediately. What is that?
Oh, apologies. I'm getting notifications. My battery's low. You have to wrap up your show. On the music tip, though, we got Vultures, one from the controversial Ye and Ty Dolla $ign, and there's three more of these fucking albums, man. I'm pretty all for it. I mean, stay canceled or whatever. I'm still listening to his music. I only listened once so far, but I just always a fan of his production. Solid features. It's not going to be Life of Pablo or Graduation or any of these older Kanye projects, but the beats were on point, and he always has the usual heavy hitters like JPEG Mafia or No ID helping out. I threw in a ton of great samples, for everything. Can it all be so simple for a minute to back that ass up? Hopefully Juvenile got a taste from that. The Donna Summer song got removed because the estate didn't approve. But pretty solid overall. I don't know if you listened to it yet, Rob.
I listened. I gave it one skim through. I think Kanye has evolved at this point to being a composer and a conductor of music, and it's less about the lyrics for him in particular. I think it was one of his worst lyrical albums, but the music itself sounds incredible. So I will listen to it again this weekend. But yeah, there was a lot of music that came out last week. I was spending a lot of time listening to the Usher album as well, which was I thought was good. Beyonce is going country now, so she dropped Texas Hold'em and 16 Carriages, which I actually quite liked. I listen. Beyonce wants to sing country music. I'll listen to it. So yeah, we had a lot of new music come out over the weekend.
Yes, sir. You into X-Men 97? Going
back
to cartoons. Look at that.
Because if you remember, the 1997 cartoon left off with a cliffhanger that they never came back to, which was they started the Phoenix saga. If you know about your comics and X-Men, Jean Grey transforms into the Phoenix, but they left it right there. They left it like mid-saga. So I'm excited for them to bring it back, finish the job. We got to know what happens with the whole Jean Grey Phoenix situation. Right. Not like we haven't had 7 movies in between them, but they stay pretty consistent with the comic books and stuff like that. So I'm excited. A little bit of a taster until they start to figure out what this X-Men cast is going to be. They announced the Fantastic Four cast this week.
Ooh, yes. I like it.
Yes. So Marvel's starting to kind of creep back in. We saw a Deadpool Wolverine trailer during Super Bowl as well, right?
I was going to pivot to that, that was a big trailer. Obviously we had, what was it? Wicked that let it off, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yep.
And then the Twister reboot that no one wanted. I didn't fucking sign up for this. Twisters with an S. Any of those piquing your interest? I'm all into. I love the Planet of the Apes, like the new revamped version. I'm very into that.
Yeah, my big thing though, all those trailers are just so heavy on the CGI. Heavy on the CGI. Oh my god, it drives me nuts. So I'm at the point right now. I'm starting to get to be old, crusty man. Give me like the old, just like original story movies. I'm kind of done with franchise right now. I think I might take a franchise break from this year. I am going to go see Dune 2 in a couple of weeks. I will go see Dune 2. But outside of that, I might take a franchise break for a little bit. I don't care about your Kung Fu Panda 4. I'm not going to go see Madam Web tomorrow or any of these franchise movies coming out. Give me new original content. Speaking of, I'm going to get off this when we're done. I'm going to watch the first episode of the Vince Staples Show on Netflix.
Hey, I was going to segue into that as well. I'm very into the Vince Staples Show. Vince Staples, hilarious. It should be very entertaining. I'm with you. There was a lot of Marvel fatigue for a while, so it'll be interesting what they do with X-Men 97. But and as much as there's a ton of CGI, just something about seeing something like Planet of the Apes on a big screen that is going to be very entertaining and loud. Maybe have some libations or an edible, something like that to enjoy it further. The Vince Staples Show, and then we're getting the end of True Detective this Sunday upcoming. So gotta occupy yourself while we are out of football season officially. What a bummer. Yes. But we press on, Ross.
We press on, absolutely.
We're out of time. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to McFact and Cliff for chiming in, having their conversation throughout the show. Remember to follow us on Twitter. Follow me at The Real Evan Mack and Ross at Ross Reed. Missed any of the episode, it'll be up on YouTube after this, on Spotify, iTunes for the audio-only versions. Like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. Have a good long weekend. Hopefully you're able to enjoy yourself on this President's Day weekend. Oh, and Ross, a happy belated Valentine's Day to you, my podcast soulmate, Ross Reed. You're the peanut butter to my jelly, the sweet to my sour, the ebony to my ivory. Hope you and the wife, celebrated appropriately. Not at all, like me and the wife did, basically. Just Netflix and chill and shit,
Yes. Happy Valentine's Day. The girls have their Galentine's Day. We can have our Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
Yes.
For now, we say deuces. Everybody be good to each other out there. So long.
Peace.